Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. It's so wonderful to be with you all for this final teaching piece. And we're so honored to have Kripa come and do a teaching segment. Kripa, we've been so grateful for you holding the group therapy sessions and being a part of this container. And this is very much a long-awaited session for us. This is a topic that pretty much everybody has asked for before the container started, during the container, and to have you hold this space and be our final class just seems very apt. And so we welcome you to deliver the space holding and facilitation skills training masterclass. It is a very short introduction today, but I have no doubt that this is going to land beautifully and integrate within the students' existing practice, professional practice and personal practice. And so I'm going to hand it over to you, and just to let everybody know that I will be supporting Kripa with just holding the space in the background, um, hosting, facilitating any questions or discussions, supporting with technical things, supporting with any group activities. So if anybody needs to send a message about, anything to do with housekeeping or structure or needing to do something or go somewhere, you can send a message to the group or you can send a message to me also, just so that Kripa is free to work her magic and not have to worry about the Zoom too much. Okay, I'll hand it over to you, my dear.
Well, we are a pretty small group, which has the advantage of meaning that we can really tailor it to what you're most curious about and what you most need. So I'd really love to invite plenty of participation and as many questions as you have. And I think that if you have a question that's a clarifying question that's going to prevent you from following or continuing to stay in participation, then you should just raise your hand right away. And if it's more of a substantial question or a kind of more of a bigger theme, then it's helpful to either put those into the chat so we can come to them in one go, or I will ask if there's any questions at certain points as well. And so it can be a good time for those. And I'm going to open with a meditation, and then we'll do some exercises together. There'll be plenty of opportunity for some discussion and some questions. I think it would be good to do a little check-in after the meditation and before the exercise. I forgot that piece. And I want to give enough time to actually do some exercises, some practices that will help you to embody what we're here for and not just have a kind of heady lesson. So that's the goal. I'm curious about if anyone needs anything before we get started, before we go into the meditation. And Raquel, obviously keep your eyes on the road. Don't follow my invitations to close your eyes. And as it's recorded, you can always listen back if you miss parts, or it can be useful for your ongoing exploration. So I'm just going to introduce the meditation to let you know the intention of the meditation, which is stemmed from my own practice of internal family systems therapy and the way that I now integrate that into my group facilitation. Because one of the things that internal family systems has given me as a practitioner is an incredible resource of both the skills and abilities of my parts and the access to self-energy, which is always ever present whenever the parts give space. And what I noticed is that it's very common, and I guess a kind of initial practice for most people leaning into their facilitator roles, that certain parts are quite good at being in the facilitator seat. Certain parts might be kind of holding a certain role, and they can lead different aspects of group facilitation. And so this meditation is to simultaneously help you to get to know some of the parts that might be closely involved in your group facilitation, so that you can really resource yourself with their skills and abilities, but also to encourage and to foster a collaborative relationship where these parts can become like consultants that are like your support team. So that self can be more in the driver's seat and more in the leadership position, without losing any of the amazing capacities of those parts that like to be involved. So that's the intention of this meditation, just to give you some space to start to get curious with and notice those parts in you. So for this, if you want to have a journal handy so that you can note down important things, you're welcome. And it's also invited to find a comfortable space that supports your presence and your self energy. If it helps you to close your eyes in order to bring more of your attention inwards, then you can follow that invitation. Just allowing yourself a couple of moments to land and arrive. And just bringing your attention inwards, starting to notice whatever you find there. Allowing your attention to take in any sensations in your body. Noticing any areas of tension or relaxation. And with permission for any tension to relax if it would like. Allowing yourself to overhear the thoughts that might be there. Understanding these as the words of your parts. Starting to listen in. And allowing any mental images to arise. Just noticing anything that may come before your mind's eye. Including any symbols or memories. Anything is welcome. And as we are landing here in a transition, you can thank any parts that have been here until now, getting you through the previous phase of your day, just to relax. Nothing they need to do here. And instead inviting closer any and all of those parts that have an interest in group facilitation, that might be part of your team, lending some skill or quality, ability, or role to your overall state of facilitator. And really allowing your system to communicate with you in the way that feels natural, trusting your interpretation of what you're seeing, because your inner system is transparent to you. Just taking in how your part or parts are showing up for you, and perhaps creating a space where they can be with you. Maybe a boardroom or a campfire or some other setup that they enjoy to be with you in. And checking how close or how far away the parts that have arrived with you are, and inviting them to come close enough that you can see, sense, hear, feel, and get a sense of them really being in connection with you. But also asking for enough space that you can focus clearly on one another and have this sense of enough space to really be in relationship. So just check if any part needs any support, either to come closer, they may need some more reassurance or safety, or to be able to soften back. They might need to let you know what their concerns are and allow you to respond to those concerns with understanding, to be able to give you a little bit more space. And a good sign that you have the right amount of space is that you might start to notice some curiosity towards who's here. If you find that you have some curiosity to learn who is it that has shown up, which parts are present for you, then you can allow your attention to move, to focus on maybe one part, maybe a group of parts, maybe spending a few moments noticing anything they want you to notice. Perhaps some are very familiar and maybe others are new. Just taking your time, allowing your attention to move between each one and the amount of time they're asking for. And as you're with these connections to these different parts, take in the quality of the relationship that you have with them. If it's a new part, then there may be lots to learn. And if it's a more familiar part, then you might get curious about how much they trust you to be in the leadership position in your system. What fears or concerns they might have about trusting you more. And they might be willing to share with you the role that they play in group facilitation. and what their intention for you is in playing that role. And anything else they might want you to know. What's going well or not so well in that role for them. And whether they're open to the idea of collaborating with you. Being in the role of consultant, co-facilitator alongside you and with you, rather than in front of you or in place of you. And if you notice that there is any part that is more concerned and maybe less willing to trust, really slow down to that part and bring as much curiosity as there is available to really invite that part to share more, what it's protecting you from, what its fear is if it would relax, or anything else that it wants you to know or understand. And we'll spend 1 or 2 more minutes just allowing this exchange, this connection between you and part or parts that you're with, before we start some integration of this beautiful team that you have. So take your time to notice where that curiosity most gravitates, or which part is really asking for a little bit more attention right now. Perhaps also being curious about the way these parts feel towards one another, if they're working in harmony or if there's any competition or conflict. Just noticing what they would like you to see. And finding a way to thank these parts for anything they've been able to show you, for trusting you enough to be here with you in the way that they have. The invitation is for these parts to stay close enough to really be with us through this journey for the next couple of hours. And for them to give enough space for you to be here alongside of them. So see if they would need anything to be able to give you permission to to hold this center inside while staying in connection with them all, so that as we transition shortly to being back in connection with one another, you can stay aware of their responses and reactions, so that you can really notice which of them are taking in and learning from what we're doing here together, which of them have questions or resistance or needs around what we're doing here. The goal of making this your amazing support team and bringing a sense of integration and harmony into how they're working together with you and one another. So we really invite them to stay close, to watch, to let you know their questions or concerns or needs as we go through the rest of today. And also asking that they stay relaxed enough to give you the space to speak for them and to be with them, so they are not having to do it alone. They are not holding the responsibility for you or any of your groups, that they get to do that under your leadership, the infinite resource that you are. And with your clarity and your confidence and your creativity and so much else that you lend, that can resource them. So taking just a few moments more to set them up in the way they need, and we will slowly transition, trying to invite that dual awareness of your inner world still as we transition into connection in the outer world, and allowing yourself to come back. If there are any parts you want to note down, feel free just to jot down anything that's important to remember. And I would love to invite a brief check-in to welcome people into the space before we do an exercise to really deepen and map the parts that came up for you in that meditation. Welcome, Roop. So feel free to check in. I'd love to just hear you bring your name into the space, where you're calling from today. And I'd really love to hear anything that you are hoping for to get out of the session today. If you have an intention for yourself, a growing edge or an area of curiosity, anything that you're hoping to get out of today, if you name it now, it might allow me to weave that in and meet as many of the needs that we have here as possible. And we'll give more opportunity and time to speak speak about and to map the parts that came up for you in the meditation, but you're welcome also to name any parts that are here, anything that you've noticed, and anything that will help you to feel seen and land in this space. And perhaps I will go first, just to model that. I'm Kripa, and I'm calling from Bristol in the UK. And I'm really glad to be here in service, actually, of what's needed here. It feels beautiful to share, like, allow this to ripple out, and I'm so excited for all of the people that will be part of your groups in future that will be able to benefit from your self-leadership. That feels really rich. And my system is feeling very relaxed, and that now my facilitation team, as I was tuning in alongside of you with the meditation, it's really feeling like a large amount of my parts are really online and available and close, but really surrendered and relaxed back, which gives such a wealth of wisdom that each of them, from their own perspective, can resonate with what's happening in the field and can let me know on the inside what they are noticing, which gives me a kind of it's like having access to the World Wide Web from the inside. So thank you for welcoming me, and feel free to check in any order.
Kripa, I was thinking it would be helpful for you to share a little bit about what you had planned for the session because I feel like it might help me to tune in with what might be useful, whether it's just themes or practices or your intention, I guess.
Yeah, so I was planning to do offer a mapping exercise next so that you can get to know your team better and the parts that either interfere or contribute to your group facilitation. I'm going to speak a little bit about the container and how to set a space and contract with the people in your groups to hopefully preempt issues arising, and then to introduce some exercises for how to troubleshoot in real time when things do arise that might be a little bit more intense or challenging, triggering, to hopefully inspire more confidence in your ability to maintain a space holder role. And actually wanted to leave it quite open aside from those bare bones of structure to meet the needs that you might have. So I'm really also very flexible to meet any questions or areas of interest that you have. And I guess that might look different for each of you here, that some of you might be holding different kinds of groups. So I'm really open to hear what would be most helpful and what are the areas that you might hope to grow in so that we could add that into the mix.
Thank you, Kripa. That's really helpful.
I don't mind sharing what came up during the meditation. Thank you for leading it, Kripa. I think where I'm at today, my parts encouraged me to, well, when I was in the meditation with my eyes closed, I could see what I believe is self, and then just two other parts. There's another one I can't quite see. One was very young, and one was more like the the elder, the motherly figure, and everyone was very much in an observing mode, almost like round the fire, absorbing. Um, there wasn't really a huge lot going on. It was quite nice to sort of witness, and I kept thinking, should something else happen? Maybe that's the vigilant part. But just observing that, and I guess what came through for me was that observation, that listening, that picking up on the collective, which I often do in the day to day. So yeah, that was it really. Thanks.
Okay, I'll share. So, hi, my name's Ria. I am based in North Yorkshire or West Yorkshire. Oh my God, where I live. West Yorkshire? West Yorkshire, okay. And yeah, it's really helpful practice, and I'm really glad that we're doing it. I held quite a big space last weekend, and I don't feel like I've fully integrated and landed and reflected on it yet because I was sick last week, which has also been quite challenging. So it was really interesting. I got some a really good insight, and none of it felt like a surprise. They all felt like parts that I know, but I felt like I had a lot more respect for them as I was getting to see them. Um, a lot of self-like parts as well that I feel like are really beautiful. Like when I'm really in the flow with facilitating, this sort of funny part comes in, which I feel like is really supportive for people to drop in. And I feel like it's a really big part of my personality. And that comes when I feel comfortable, or other parts feel comfortable to let that part through. It's a really self-like part. Um, the parts that felt a bit more tender. It's the parts that worry that people won't like it or that they'll be disappointed. And I felt that there was some connection also to money in there, that they might want their money back or they won't feel like they got their money's worth. And it's not a very loud part, but it was sort of skirting around the group, and its face was like this. Like, oh, tender hooks vibes. Yes, that was interesting. And the part that I actually there was one part that I didn't really haven't acknowledged so much, but there's a part that helps the other parts trust the self, which was so nice. Like it's sort of like it was its job to keep everybody in line and say, but look over there, there's a way that we can step back into trust. So that was really nice. Um yeah, generally I'm arriving a bit irritable. Um there's parts that are feeling quite overwhelmed at the moment, and really definitely have a story that they don't have anything else to give, feeling a bit over facilitated. um yeah, so that's around. Yeah, yes, that's enough for now. Thanks everyone. Oh yeah, and things I'd like things that came up when you were speaking about intentions and desires. um mm, Three things. This is just what I've written down. When people are really blended with parts, um, sort of adjacent to that, when people really struggle to connect to the parts or struggle to go inwards. And just something else that came up, and I think this is more of a personal thing, but like what helps me to drop in at the start of a workshop? Like, how do I feel landed with the group? Like, I don't quite feel like, yeah, I've got that way that I'm like, okay, this is how I arrive here, you know. So yeah, thanks.
Those are super rich questions. And I just feel to note that your self-like funny part, that playfulness is a quality of self-energy. So really welcoming her. Raquel, I'm so happy that you've somewhat landed, and I wonder if you're available to check in or if you would like me to circle back to you.
I'm here.
Great. Hi, welcome.
I can check in, but also for some reason my camera is just not working right now. So it would require me to restart my computer, but don't know if I want to do that right now. So maybe I can check in with my voice.
That's good.
Then I'll try to reset my camera. I think I missed the prompts maybe because I lost connection.
We're inviting your name and where you're calling from. Anything that you want to share about you or your parts or the meditation just to help you land. And anything that you were hoping to get from today, any areas of curiosity or growth edges or anything you'd like to name that would be welcome to receive out of the time together today.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, I'm Raquel and I'm landing from West Yorkshire. I'm currently house pet sitting in a beautiful farm up on the top of a hill. And it's really gorgeous. I'm arriving with a little bit of like, I haven't, not grounded, basically. I think there's quite a few parts of me that are, a little bit like in the head, in the mind, in the thinking. I've got the doggies here just saying hello. I don't know if you can hear them. Hello. So I went somewhere out this afternoon. Okay. Yeah, I went somewhere this afternoon and I was out for longer than I expected. So I didn't get to do the things that I had planned before arriving. So I'm conscious that there's a little parts of me still with the what was meant to do. Unless, I think a little bit lack on the self energy in this moment. um, and I quite like what Ria asked about, tools to like really land with the people in the field. I think it's really helpful. Also, like anything, I sense, for myself and my experience, I sense sometimes when I'm facilitating for a group, there's moments when you feel the engagement is there, like we're all there together. And then, on occasion something happens and you lose the group a little bit, or the group loses the cohesion. And so anything around like, how to use the IFS tools to help people, coming back to their togetherness in a way. And anything in relation to, I think I'm quite open, to be honest, like any tools that, like besides our sessions, I haven't really experienced, IFS in a group. So I'm curious to see how it might apply to my own work. So anything in like, tools for like parts, meditations, or things like that would be really helpful. Thank you.
That's so rich. Thank you. I really appreciate all of those questions. And it makes sense and it kind of corresponds to what I had already had in mind. So that feels really confirming and aligning. And so I wonder now if it would be good to introduce an exercise. I'm open to your idea, Natasha. I don't know if Emma is going to still arrive. And if If not, how would be best to arrange pairs. Follow your guidance on that so that everybody can have the right experience.
Absolutely. So it doesn't look like Emma is coming. She's not messaged me. I'm happy to do breakout rooms, and I'm also happy to be a pair as well, be in a pair too, so that we have even numbers. That's right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So in that case, we could do a dyad exercise. And what I will do is stay in the main room. So if anyone from any dyad has a question or wants some support or help, then I can do that. What I'd like to invite is for you in dyads to, based on that meditation of noticing who is in your team, to map out the team that you have noticed, whether that's some preparing parts, perfectionist parts, vigilant parts, vulnerable parts, empath parts, parts that hold particular skills like psychic parts and sensitive parts and different kinds of parts that you might have noticed. And just to pick a part that might want a little bit more understanding and connection, maybe could be a part that has got is very like keen and overexcited to step into your shoes and to do this for you, that might want you to get to know it in order to build more connection. Or it could be a part that has got some fears or concerns about letting you lead, and just to in your pairs share something about the part that's alive for you with your partner, and invite your partner to bring some curiosity to that part in you, and to essentially just try the first 3 F's of find where is the part in or around your body, focus, what are you noticing about that part as it shows up right now, and befriend, getting to know a little bit about that part. So it'd be good to have maybe 20 minutes in total, so like 7 minutes of talking about the part, and then like reflecting back for 3, so like 10 minutes and then 10 minutes. What I can do, I'm curious if I put that in the chat so that it's kind of visible to everybody, will that be still visible in the breakout rooms?
I think so. And you can also send a message into the breakout rooms as well. Just to let you know, Kripa, I've made you a co-host.
Right.
I can't assign myself to a breakout room. So I'm going to have to ask you to manually do the breakout rooms if that's okay, so that then you can just assign me to somebody.
Okay, great. So maybe what I'll do is assign you to Raquel so that if she needs to do a shorter session, that you're the one that misses out.
Sure.
Okay, great. I still don't see how to add you, because your name is not coming up on the list of people I can select to manually add. What I'll do is open the rooms and then see if you can just join it yourself. Yeah, you're muted, but I think I just got that, so yes. Okay, so I will send that again as a reminder in the message, about 10 minutes each side, and you can take a minute or two just to check in with which part really wants the space. And I will open those rooms now. You're muted.
Hi,
Hello.
Hey, I'm just going to go into a room so that we have some privacy.
Yeah, sorry, my camera is not.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, okay. Let me see if can you share with me what Kripa asked us to do? Because I was fiddling around with the breakout rooms and didn't quite get it.
I think from the meditation, or I guess the team,
Yeah.
the parts team that we have in our facilitation, to
Yeah.
pick one that's most alive now, that would like to show up and speak or be seen,
Mm.
have a bit of like an inquiry with it, and then after sharing what that is, having a bit of a 3 Fs.
So I'm happy to just hear anything if anyone has anything they want to ask or share since doing that exercise. And if not, we can move straight into the next section. But feel free just to let me know. So I wanted just to move now into looking at the kind of structure, the structural aspects of setting the container, cleansing yourself, cleansing the space, preparing your inner system, opening space, and what I call contracting, which is really setting the agreements between everybody that's participating in the group. And my sense is that when these things are done correctly, a lot else takes care of itself. When you arrive and open space, it can be a ritual that almost primes your system to enter that mode of facilitation. And the agreement I have with opening sacred space is that when I open sacred space, I completely trust and surrender to everything that unfolds down to the minutest detail between that moment and when I close space again. So I kind of hand over to the divine in that period in between opening and closing sacred space, that the synchronicity is all on purpose. Things that look like mistakes or accidents are really opportunities. And we just need to stay curious and open to know, well, what is that? And it might not be something that we know with a cognitive mind or that we get the insight in that moment. Sometimes the integration brings that clarity of why it was perfect when it didn't feel that way at the time. So something about setting the container and opening the space needs to have something of a sacred contract between you and whatever you're invoking or calling in your spaces. That can prime you to hold that attitude whilst you're in the container with your group. The idea of contracting can begin before the group has even formed in how you're advertising the group or informing people about the group in terms of who it's open to. If there's an expectation of any prior knowledge, if there's an expectation that people can self-regulate, if there is any expectations or norms that will be observed, any inclusions or exclusions that are important for the cohesion of the group. It's really helpful. The more of that is explicit, it can mean that the people that are attracted to the group are going to be in the right frame for what you're able to offer, what you're able to hold space for, and that they might be correctly primed for the level of depth that's available versus expected. So that can really go a long way. It's part of the contracting as well. Once you're in the space with a group of people, aside from the basics of housekeeping and how they might need to ask questions or what breaks there will be or how they can navigate those details, that there's also a kind of, often it's an implicit shared agreement about the expectations of how we show up in the space. And I've found that the more that we can make that explicit, the smoother the groups tend to be. And those aspects of the shared agreement can be things like crosstalk, do we allow it or not? Interrupting, is it allowed or not? From the facilitator or from other people. Are there any requirements about when it's okay to make sound and what kinds of sound? When are words accepted and when are they not welcome? So if you have a sharing circle and a talking stick, for example, then just setting that expectation explicitly that we respect those who are holding the talking stick would be a good example. Or refraining from giving unsolicited advice might be another. So these are kinds of preemptive ways that we create a culture, temporarily, a little culture bubble of how we show up, what's permitted and what's requested for the safety and the comfort of the group. So it can be helpful to think about in advance what your needs are as a facilitator to feel comfortable holding a group. Are there any exclusions that would actually be in service of the group? Or any conventions that you appreciate? For example, it might be that all processing happens in the space and that you request people don't leave. Or it might be the opposite, that you request that if people are having a certain type of experience, that they would leave the room for that. So it can really depend based on the context and the purpose of the group, what the contract would be. But it can be super helpful to note those things down for yourself ahead of time and to make your group as aware of those as possible and as far in advance as it is appropriate. So I'm curious at this point if anyone has any thoughts, ideas about that, questions about that, thoughts about that. One thought that comes up to me is that these rituals can be part of what helps us to land in the group, which was one of your questions, Ria. So I'm curious if anything is coming up for anyone, anything that you'd like more details around or brainstorm together.
One thing that I feel to share, because this is something that I witnessed another facilitator doing, which I thought was a really good way of doing it, but it was in a longer training, so we did have way more time to do it. But I just feel to share it because I always feel quite inspired when I think about it. But she had a list, a double A4 sheet of paper of loads of agreements, right?
Mhm.
loads of agreements. How do we interact here? What are we here for? What does it look like? What about photos? What about consent? So
Mhm.
like, and then as an activity, as part of landing, we got into groups with our pods. And the first activity that we did together was to go through the practice, to go through the agreements and choose which ones we found the most important. So it meant that everybody was reading all the agreements and also had a space to discuss it, and then also fed back into the group like which ones they found useful.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a really juicy way of doing it.
Yeah, it is super juicy. And depending on the frame of what we're holding, if it's a longer process, if it's a deep dive, or if it's a shorter one-off, then obviously that might dictate the amount of space that you can give it. But you can really get ahead of that by sending out agreements ahead of time, or by having them available for people to read ahead of time. I created a document that's like 6 pages long or something that really goes through every little nuance of the shared agreement that's implicit when we meet together, which kind of had the intention of equalizing the power dynamic amongst mixed neurotype groups, because the social conventions are not always equally obvious when they're left implicit. And it's just a way of really leveling that playing field and making even things that we might take as kind of culturally obvious or like socially normal, and actually not assuming anything, and really making each aspect of how we relate in a group to be explicit. So I really think that it's worth the investment of time to get clear about what the agreements are for the groups you hold. It can also be a really great preemptive solution if you find any disruptive qualities occurring in the group, because then you can, without any kind of power struggle or conflict, just refer back to the agreement. I love that share.
I had something that just came up there, if that's okay, in relation to what you've just shared.
Yes, please.
Um, yeah, I had a part that just went, oh, how do we do that? How do we refer back to the group agreement in that moment? This part's curious to know, like your little top tips or really wonderful ways of phrasing that kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, well, I'm really curious about that too. I wonder what everyone's instinct is of what their first thought might be in terms of how to do that. My sense is, let's assume for a second that we had an agreement to be on screen, on camera. So then I might say, "Oh, Natasha, I just want to remind you that the agreement was that we stay on screen. Can I check if you need any support with that?"
Um, yeah. Yeah, I guess I could maybe just make it clear or just communicate why I'm not on screen. Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah. And then if it's kind of if it's a hard agreement, then her explaining why she's not on screen might invite a solution finding. And it depends on how important the agreement is to kind of inclusion. It might be okay, well, actually, if you're not able to be on screen, given that that's a requirement, we can't class you as having attended, or we're going to ask you to drop off the call, or and it's really helpful to kind of convey those expectations before about what's required for participation and inclusion, so that there are no surprises. That if it's kind of mandatory to be, let's say, on screen, that would be, communicated ahead of time what the consequence for that would be. And then then there might just be an accommodation that's needed, in which case we do whatever's within reasonable power to make the accommodation so that inclusion is possible.
Great, thank you.
So, any other thoughts or questions or comments about the frame, the container, or contracting? I think that opening space can be something that's quite unique and individual to you, that you might find your own ways of doing that feel right and aligned for you. They might be different on different occasions depending on the type of group. For myself, I often have a kind of private opening that comes before everyone else has arrived. And then I also open space collectively with those who are present so that we can be part of that landing in together. And part of my private opening is also about connecting in with my parts, my system, and checking in if any of them need anything to be able to relax or to be able to trust. Or often, right before a group, I might have my kind of organizing parts that might be like, yes, don't forget to send this Zoom link to so-and-so, and make sure I have the lists to hand, and make sure I've got the drink I need, and things that those parts might need the gear shift. And then also inviting in my resources, the parts that are really helpful to have close at hand, and any of my guides or the beings that I want to invoke to lend their support to the space. So it can be really helpful and important, again, to be building that practice ahead of leading groups, and to be building the relationships with those resources, those parts, or those other beings, to make it sort of smoother and easier every time to make that transition. So I want to really invite this recognition of contagion, that parts beget parts, and that self begets self. So when I'm in self energy and my self energy is flowing, it creates a baseline, an anchor, an entrainment point, so that the nervous systems in the space with me have the ability to attune to that and to entrain with that. And it becomes easier for the rest of the group to hold some self energy along with me. We then create a greater field of self that is always greater than the sum of the parts, which is why it's so powerful to meet in groups, and stuff that's possible with the amplification of multiple systems that just isn't reachable with yourself, or even in a dyad. Sometimes it can really lend a lot because it's always greater than the sum of the parts. And likewise, parts are going to have the effect of bringing parts in others. So the more that my parts are visible and strong and leading, the more likely it is that the responses I'm getting are going to be parts led as well. So the key skill in order to facilitate as much of a self-led group, and of course it's the self energy that does the healing, so we really want to encourage that, is what we call a U-turn. If we're noticing a lot of parts up in the group, the first question we want to ask is, what about me? Am I leading with a part? Is there a part in me that I may not be noticing or haven't noticed just yet, that might be contributing or even triggering that dynamic? So that's where kind of getting to know your facilitation team is so useful, because then you could do this more quickly. And we'll do an exercise in a little bit of time that will really train this skill that we've called the fire drill in the IFS world, which is when we notice that we're blended with a part, how quickly can we notice, parts detect, turn inwards and check in what's going on, what's needed, and unblend, and return then to the space with that spaciousness, that presence opened back up. And it can be palpable actually just doing that, which actually doesn't require anything from anyone else, how quickly that can shift that whole energy and can shift any dynamic that might be present. And even if nothing else does change in the participants, once you've made that shift, you become more available to be curious about what's going on and to name anything that you're noticing, and then to facilitate a shift that might include supporting others to unblend, or maybe introducing a practice that will meet whatever is alive. So that kind of a little bit touches on one of your questions, Ria, about when people are blended. I'm going to go a lot more into that because I want to give some tools for how to do the unblending. But it just seems like the first port of call, because it's your realm of sovereignty, that the first thing to do when someone else is blended is to do that U-turn and first start with, am I as well? And is that a contributing factor here? It may also be that this U-turn piece adds a little nuance to how do I feel landed within the group, because self is just present in the field of the group. So any unlandedness that's happening is the experience of a part. So that means that this U-turn and this checking in with which part is not feeling so settled or so present or so landed, when that part unblends, there's a dropping in. And I think that this U-turn is also really such a versatile tool. It's like the main one. Is also so helpful for that question you asked, Raquel, about those moments when the engagement is lost and the cohesion is lost, and how to help coming back to the togetherness. And that would be, again, do the U-turn and check in with, what are my parts noticing? What's happening? Which parts have been slightly triggered by this? Is there and I found that my parts are like a barometer, because they might not take over, but when I tune in and I notice, okay, which parts are slightly more tense, which parts are slightly closer, they have their own stories that I'm now familiar with about what their triggers are. So if I notice I have a part feeling tense about something, if I bring some curiosity in for just a moment and ask what's going on for you, they will let me know what it is. And they will have noticed, oh, maybe it's like there's a draft and we need to close the door, and that's somehow interfering with the energy. Or they might notice, there was like a little spike when that person used a word that had a certain connotation, and I noticed there's that little ripple that went through the space. Like they would be able to pinpoint what was the transition or the trigger that led to something happening in the space. And once they've given me that information, I thank them, they can relax again because they trust me to handle it. and I might just name it. I might just fix the problem. If it's something simple to do, like close a window or change the lights, or if it's something that happened, then I could make a judgment call about whether just to name it, de-shame it, and oftentimes making something explicit is an immediate relaxer for the nervous system. Yeah.
Yeah, as you're speaking to this, it's reminding me of something that happens when I do workshops. Because in my workshops, I'm talking about sexuality, which is quite edgy for people anyway, and lots of parts are up. But I'm also now really bringing in this lens of like the history and religion. And as soon as I start talking about religion, people in the room, something happens, this tension happens. You feel this edginess in the space. And I think that, as you're speaking to this, it's making me think what would ease that. And I do talk to it, but I notice that it also activates parts in me of like, oh my God, do other people feel uncomfortable? I don't
Right.
want to make this part doesn't want to make people feel uncomfortable or ostracized in any way or like
Yeah.
dislike it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak to that and see like what your thoughts are, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it makes so much sense. And I know that from my experience, the quickest way to make someone uncomfortable is to blend with my part that really doesn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. Because that feels like a weird sort of pressure, right? Um, and so I think that it really does make sense that the U-turn to check in with that part of you that has this fear of making others uncomfortable um, might have some wisdom for you. And when it comes to triggering topics, I find that um, checking in with consent can make a big difference. So even just flagging, hey, I'm going to talk about something that's a little edgy. Sometimes people get triggered. The topic is religion. Anyone who wants to name a trigger around this or opt out, take a bathroom break now. Or, if you just name it, oftentimes that's enough to de-arm people because then they feel that you're getting that there might be a reaction, so they don't feel weird about having one. So it can be just so helpful to name, hey, this could be triggering, because that way people don't feel shame if they get triggered. They just feel like, oh yeah, I have parts around this too.
Yeah, and I also see there a great opportunity to invite people to track their parts, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's really helpful. Like, maybe I don't know if Natasha introduced you to the idea of legacy burdens. These are like burdens that don't come from our personal experience, but are almost like imbibed by osmosis from our culture or from our ancestors or from our surroundings almost. That there can be burdens that are really passed down for like huge amounts of time. And having legacy burdens around religion and politics and sexuality and gender is so normal for most people. And some of them are going to be have a lot of shame around them. So we don't want to admit that, like, I have a little bit of a racist part or I have a little bit of a sexist part, or that's really edgy. So I think anything you can do to normalize, de-shame, name, make explicit in a comfortable way can really give people permission to explore those places without the sort of stigma and judgment that often makes that really hard and sticky. Does that make sense to you? I think that navigating the consent piece is really helpful as well in terms of what's invitational what's really important that people agree to participate in, or else they really aren't a good fit for the session that you're offering. And then kind of getting opt-in as often as possible with what's happening. And that can be tricky when we are aware of all of our parts, because we might have opt-in from some parts and not others. So it can be helpful to offer these moments of requesting consent that might even have an awareness of that. Like, notice if you have parts that feel resistant, that are withholding consent right now. If there's a need that we could meet that could create the safety for them to participate, or if they're really alerting you to a need, a nervous system need, or a genuine boundary that actually needs to be honored, it can give people the empowerment to either make a request for an accommodation so that they can be included, or to learn how to honor their boundaries and give them the practice of embodying their no, which can also be just as therapeutic and healing. I've had some participants in workshops who had the most healing from saying, I need a nap and I'm not going to do this exercise. I'm going to lie under a blanket in the corner for this one. And that was so much what they needed, to be able to do that in a witnessed way, in a shared space, when they previously had so much shame around that. It was the most healing thing that could have happened for that person. And I can remember a part of me that had this moment of, does it reflect badly on me if people are not participating in my workshop, right? And noticing that slight contraction in my belly and that like little wave, I just took a second inside. I'm like, this is not about me. Okay, have a nap. And it was so healing for her to feel that real genuine acceptance and softness around that. Whereas if that part had blended and been like, oh yeah, okay, I guess, but she'd felt my unease with that, it would have been such a different experience. Yeah, Ria.
Yeah, I was speaking to Nadine about, I have a little part like this also. It has a slightly different story as to like, is it good? But it's almost, maybe it's a similar vibe, but it has a story of like, it wants people to have peak experiences, which so many of my other parts just disagree with that so much. And on a logical level, I know, but this part is like, it wants people to be crying and screaming, and it wants people to be having these big releases so that it feels like it's going well. You know, it sees this as a marker. So I guess it has a similar vibe. And what usually helps me is just to say something to my assistant in a jokey way. Like, oh, go on, let's make more of them cry. And it helps me to just speak to that part and bring it in and presence it, and we have a little laugh about it. And then I'm able to come back into that space.
Yeah.
So it just is, I'm glad you presenced it, because it's interesting noticing, yeah, what can come up, what some parts see as success.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so helpful. And that's really why, the main piece today was really around getting to know your team. Because when you understand a little bit about their backstory, about the beliefs they hold, the emotions they're holding, it can give us the opportunity to deepen our own work with those parts. Sometimes when a part like that can unburden from beliefs that aren't really true, like that external catharsis is the sign of success or something like that, which we know isn't the capital T truth. It can be that for some, where catharsis has been challenged and they need that. And other times it can be the opposite, right? It can be a performance for some that actually what's really going to be most therapeutic for them is to be more tuned into their inner world without that outward expression. So it can be so helpful to notice which parts are holding beliefs that limit our capacity to show up in the ways that we want to, and helping them to release those burdens too can free us up.
And that's why I'm so grateful for parts work, because when we just have more abundance of self energy, it's so much easier to just talk to these parts and let them have their little say and
Yeah.
give them a seat at the table. But, it's a very small voice. And I think that going through IFS is just, it just
Right.
happens so naturally that there's more self energy available, and these parts just don't need to shout so loud.
Right.
And it's just
It's so
gorgeous.
true.
Yeah.
And I think that, that little part of you is also a really big facilitator of empathy, because you won't be the only person in the room holding that opinion. And then if you name, hey, I've got a little part that like thinks it's more helpful or more important to do really big catharsis, it's like, oh gosh, so much of a like relief to that person who was like feeling a pressure to perform and now doesn't have to, or like, maybe even gives a moment of insight to someone who's been cathartic in a way that might be overdoing it, or like there could be so many gifts in that revelation of what's happening for your part. So I really trust that in the container of the sacred space that you're creating, in whatever way you're doing that, your parts are your barometer, and what they're bringing you is always relevant information. The more healing you've done, the more likely that the information is relevant to the group and the purpose of the group, and not just relevant to your own healing needs. Which is also a possibility that sometimes, there's a little flag up for what you need to heal that can come up in the context of group. But mostly then the parts that come up are giving you some kind of a sense of what's alive. It can be a kind of support for your ability to tune into the resonant field and be empathetic with the subtle energies that might be alive in the group. Because your inner world is like the reflection of the outer world. So the parts that arise and get louder in you are sensing something and giving you information about what that is. And because we are connected, because the resonant field is something we're in as a shared container, shared energetic space, if my parts are having a certain response, then there might be other individuals having that same response. And there might be individuals on the polarity of that response that are in some dynamic with that. Check if that's making sense, if there's any questions about that or any examples you might want to deepen into.
I have something that I just want to reflect, just as it's live coming up for me. I'm just remembering about a part that can be active in me when I facilitate, which is like the part that is wondering how, like wondering how things are landing with participants. And this is really, really useful for that part it's like this, like I'm feeling it in and I'm remember, like if we're feeling it and we're wondering if this is landing, if we're feeling it, then it's likely that that's being reflected in the group. And we also know that then there's likely to also be a polar of that, and this part's like, oh, okay, reminding itself that there are all these little ways that we can also like reassure our system, like, or if we're in touch with it and we're feeling it, but also we can ask, we can bring it into this space. Like we have all these tools available to be able to check in, so that's really helpful for me. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. So I want to touch on the question of when people struggle to go inwards that you asked, Ria. And then I want to go deeper with unblending, and then also introduce a practice so we can really embody and practice the skill of unblending, both for ourselves and others. Both really important. So one thing that comes up for me around when people struggle to go inwards would first of all be the U-turn piece of what in me needs that person to go inwards right now. What if they don't? Is that okay? Are there parts of me that feel responsible for the healing that they're doing, or responsible for making something happen? I also come to curiosity about whether the container has been set correctly, in the sense that the people that have arrived have the awareness and of the expectation of what will happen and the capacity to engage in it at the appropriate level. And assuming that that's the case, and assuming that I don't have parts that are getting involved, then it might be a matter of, does this person need support or some additional facilitation to help them to maybe name an accommodation they need, or something that they might need to receive or to hear in order to feel safe enough to go inside. Or in that case, it might be again just about that person being facilitated to exercise their consent and their no. If they do not want to go inside, assuming that all of those other things have been checked off, that might be okay. I'm super open if you want to add anything, or let me know how that may have met the question. If anyone has any extra ideas about that. Okay, so I think it would be good then to introduce the exercise that I've got in mind for practicing blending. I sent you a PDF, Natasha. I sent it on WhatsApp, so I don't know if you're able to share it here with the group. Just because it's a little tiny bit more complex, so I thought it would be useful to have the prompts, and then you can keep this as a resource also. So I'm going to give us 30 minutes for this exercise, and actually, yeah, no, 30 minutes would be great. And then in pairs. So what we might sometimes find is that, so this is useful. I'm going to talk through what the exercise is, but this is useful for several reasons. One is if we get triggered by something or someone whilst we're in the facilitator's seat, we need a quick fire way to support ourselves to regulate very quickly and to come back into presence to hold the group. And it can happen that someone says something that just takes us off guard or hits a certain spot, and we notice that we've become triggered. So this is super helpful for how to notice that and find a way of meeting the part that got triggered and supporting an unblending for ourselves so that that part can relax and we can return to attend to them once it's safe to do so, after the group has ended or when there's a break. And really embodying this from the inside, knowing how this process works for your own parts, is possibly the biggest teacher for then how to facilitate someone else to unblend. Because if your parts would respond in a particular way and they're willing to unblend, then you also have the method of how to give someone else the opportunity to make a similar movement in their own system. And this skill is kind of the same then for when someone in the group might get triggered and might need some support to unblend. So this is really speaking to that question that Ria asked about when people are really blended. Because we can use this exercise to support them to unblend too. So this is a partner exercise, and the first person in the exercise A is going to be in the kind of role of the facilitator to start off with, and is going to think about maybe the example here talks about like getting triggered by someone that they know, or a friend or a neighbor, but we could make it more specific to this by imagining maybe a participant or a certain energy that you've encountered when you facilitated a group that has got the chance of triggering you more so. So is there a certain kind of energy that you generally find more challenging, or that generally brings a part up for you? So you can think of an example that you'd like to work with that might be a trigger, and you can describe it to your partner, person B, and get them to play it back to you, so to show you. And maybe Natasha, you'd like in a minute just quickly do a demo of this, so that, and we'll just do a short version, but just so that people can see what that looks like. So getting the person to mirror that back to you, to basically role play or act out the triggering person, and you can just coach them a little bit so they get it right until you notice that it's working, and you notice that a part of you comes up and gets a little bit triggered, so that you can have this embodied experience of getting a little bit triggered. And as soon as you notice that you've become triggered, you're going to let that person know they can stop, so they don't push you into overwhelm. They just want to do it enough just so you notice that trigger come up. I'm going to say, just for this context as well, maybe it's okay to pick a mild trigger and not the most triggering thing that's ever happened to you. But just to kind of know what feels within your intolerance right now. So what happens next? Once you have noticed that trigger, take a pause, take a couple of breaths, and then go inside and do that U-turn and notice the part that's been triggered. And you can just welcome them and let them know it's okay, see what they want you to know, where it's happening in your body, and see if you can facilitate them to soften back and to unblend. And if they do, then you can ask the partner that you have to do it again and notice, now that that part's unblended, does it still trigger you? Or is there a different kind of energy, different kind of response that you have now? And if it does trigger them again, then you just repeat the exercise. If you find that the part that gets triggered is not unblending that easily, then you can ask your partner to give you some support, so they stop role-playing the triggering person and instead step in as your coach. And on the exercise sheet, there is like a list of tools for unblending that are sentences that you can use to facilitate your partner to unblend. So this is really helpful because when you're in the facilitator role, these are also the same sorts of questions that you might use to support a participant to unblend. So you can have the kind of embodied experience of being on both sides of the dynamic. And so that piece, I'm giving you 10 minutes to do that, get a part triggered, and then help it to unblend. And then 5 minutes just to talk about the process. And then switch over and do the same thing the other way around. So we'll do a little live demo now, just so that it's clear. Natasha, would you like to be person A, describing a triggering thing to me, or would you prefer to be person B and I'll describe a trigger to you?
I'll be person A.
Okay.
Great. Should I just go ahead and
Go ahead,
launch into it? Okay, wonderful. So it was not an individual person, but a part that I noticed that I noticed that sometimes when I ask a question in a group, like for feedback or how this is landing, and then nothing comes back, that can trigger a part that's concerned about that.
Well, I can do a completely non-plus dead face if you want to ask a question and see if that triggers you. And if you need me to do it a little differently, you can tell me how.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That would work.
And then you can tell me to stop when you notice the trigger, and we can do the steps from there.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's really useful to have you re-explain that. Okay, so I'm just going to pause here and see if there are any questions, if there's any feedback or reflections on this piece. Yeah, I'm feeling that now. Yeah.
So you can go inside and notice if it is showing up anywhere in particular.
Yeah, I notice it right here. Yeah.
And to see if it's willing to unblend just for you, or if it might want a bit of extra support, you can let me know.
Yeah, its energy hasn't really got its grips in on me. It's willing to unblend. I can sense that energy from it, but it needs some reassurance.
Yeah.
I can feel like my breathing has changed.
Yeah.
I want to do this.
Yeah. See if you could give it the reassurance it's looking for.
Yeah. Okay, I've done that.
Yeah. Has it given you some space now, and can it see that you're there with it?
It has. It wants to just kind of be there on the side, so it's not really willing to fully relax back.
You see, might it need something else, or would it be right to try again to see the trigger and see how it feels different with her on the side like that?
Well, I'll just ask her if she needs anything else. Yeah, she actually just needed a little bit more reassurance on the same thing, but in like a different way. So that feels a bit better. Yeah, it feels like there's more space now. She's like relaxed back a little further back.
Okay. And would she allow you to be the one to face the triggering situation now and see if that feels different for you both?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that again for you.
Okay. So I'll just pause here and invite any questions, reflections, or comments on that piece. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. How is that different? Seems
Yeah,
like
and
you're relaxed.
that was great. I just felt my shoulders just relax into that. Like, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. I love that. So I'm curious because there are so few of us. There's really just you two.
Yeah.
And Raquel has asked to sit it out because she's got some dogs happening. What I wonder if it would feel comfortable, Ria and Nadine, instead of going into a breakout room, whether you'd be open to doing that here, and that way we can coach you and we can kind of all learn from that. That feel comfy? All right. So maybe, yeah, maybe just pick. Natasha, would you time for us? Just like let them know when the 10 minutes and then the 5 minutes and then the 10 minutes and then the 5 minutes are up.
Sure. Should I give it like a 2-minute warning for the 10 minutes?
I don't know if it's possible just to kind of put there's a timer app on this thing. Let me do it this way.
Okay.
Okay, there. Now everyone can see the 10-minute timer.
Never seen that before on Zoom.
It's great, huh? Okay, so that's the first round. So you can decide who wants to go first in person A's role, and we'll just sit right back and let you guys carry on. But if either of you get stuck and you want a little bit of coaching or intervention, just let us know.
So we're doing it with each other, but in here. So Nadine, would you like to be person A or B? I can't think of any. I need to think of some triggers.
I was fully present and listening to that really great description, so thank you. And I was listening, and I have got the PDF up, but my parts have scrambled it in my brain, and so I'm currently sitting here. Yeah, I'm looking at the PDF, and I know we're applying it to the group exercise, but I'm reading it as here with like TV person they know, friend or neighbor. So could you just whip me in line a little bit? And I'm happy to jump in first if needed. Sorry.
Yeah, so the friend or neighbor thing is just because it's a resource I've used in a different context. So
Yeah.
really what we're looking for is like a trigger that might come up in the context of facilitation. So if you've ever been triggered slightly in the facilitator role, you could take an example from that.
I'm back in the room. Thank you. So I'm so sorry. Um, okay, so if I'm happy to go first, do I just close my eyes down and go with it, or
So you would first explain to Ria what the triggering person is like or does so that she can role play that for you and get you triggered.
yeah, that might help. Thank you. So sorry. Okay, so this is something that has happened that I would say is a trigger to my parts when I've been holding a space or a session of whatever kind, thinking back over the years, and where a participant constantly is sort of chatting to someone else, chatting between when I'm trying to calmly describe something to the group. And I've already laid out some housekeeping suggestions at the start. And this person just, or when it's happened, on occasion, I find it very distracting. I find it very disrespectful, and my parts get triggered.
So would it be useful, Nadine? I'm hearing that there's parts that get triggered when someone is chatting or having little conversations when you're trying to explain or talk about something. So would it feel helpful for you to maybe explain something or talk about something and I can mutter something to Natasha?
I could do, yeah, yeah. I think also what I just came to mind then is that in that moment when those sorts of things have happened, um, my like manager and firefighter parts do step in and just be like, just keep it calm, don't lose your shit because you've got a group here and you want to maintain the like the sacredness of a space. And so they're working overtime, but inside like I'm raging and really annoyed. Um, and then it also then brings in another part that goes, see, it's not interesting enough. You're not engaging people. You're really boring people, and that person's interrupting because such and such. So then I'm also having to manage that part. Yeah. So sure. I mean, we can just go with it. I don't know how it's gonna land, but sure.
Yeah, great and great. Oh,
Yeah, so Nadine, as soon as you notice that the trigger has happened and those parts are around, you can pause, Ria, and then you can turn to that unblending side.
Hmm.
and I
Okay.
guess Kripa, like if there's all these parts that rush in and maybe there's a lot of blending that's going on, like how are you inviting lots of parts to step back at once, or is it like focusing on one specific part and stepping back one by one?
Yeah, well, I might try for the efficient route first. And if they, if that works for some parts, great. And if any parts are struggling with that and need some one-to-one attention, just go to them one-to-one. So I think there's no wrong answer. It's just whatever works. And practicing like this is a good way to find out what does work for you, and especially for these parts.
Great, thanks.
Okay,
Nadine,
do I just go?
let's go.
Oh
Yeah.
God. Okay. Okay, everybody. So if you'd like to just settle down, thank you very much for coming back to the space. I just wanted to remind you all that we're going to take a break in the next 30 minutes. And we're going to focus on mainly to do with nutrition and herbs to do with stress in this part of the session. So if anyone has any questions as we are moving through, please either raise your hand or keep it to the end, and I'll come back to you. And
Hmm. Yeah, thanks, Nadine. So tell me a little bit about what you're noticing.
um, yeah, I can notice that sort of feeling of like the parts coming up in me going, I need to address it, but also should I carry on? And I should just, keep on going for the group and address it later with that person. And then there's other parts going, like, no, you can't carry on because they're going to be all distracted and no one's probably listening if two people are chatting. And yeah.
Yeah, great. So just inviting you to notice where in your body you sense these two parts.
Hmm.
Can you tell me a bit more about how they're showing up?
Yeah, I think uh one of the parts is like in the area of my chest because I guess that's where you breathe and kind of also the beginning of your voice comes from. So, and that part is kind of like feels like it's nestled around there. And so, like, the more I'm noticing it, the more that part is like expanding into my chest, and I'm like, like that. But then the other part, maybe that's the firefighter, excuse me, like somewhere in my body that I actually can't locate right now is just going, it's gonna be okay, it's okay, gonna be okay, just carry on. Just
Mhm. Okay, great. Yeah, and it sounds like from what I'm hearing that the part in the chest is sounding a bit stronger than the other part right now. Is that right?
yeah, probably more like prominent.
Yeah, amazing. So with that part in the chest that you're noticing, as you're sort of witnessing and being present with it and being able to feel it, like, is there a way that that could just lean back slightly out of your experience?
Hmm.
Yeah, great. And as it does that, like how do you feel towards it now? Like where are you noticing it?
Literally just like, I guess, taking a back seat, just sort of hanging fire for a minute.
Yeah, great. Great. Hmm. Yeah, and just noticing how does it feel to sort of be in close distance to it? Do you feel like you want a bit more space from it, or does it feel like it's at an okay distance to observe?
Yeah, it feels fine.
Great. Hmm. Sorry, Nadine, you stay in the process. Kripa, is this all that we're doing? Is this the point that we're taking it to?
Once the unblending has happened, you invite if she would like to witness the trigger again and see if it feels different.
Great. Yeah, so Nadine, how would it feel to do that, to go back into maybe just touching on the trigger and seeing how you feel in relation to the part?
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
So if you do notice that come up again, just raise your hand and we'll stop. We'll stop doing the practice. Great.
Okay. So, thanks everybody for coming back into the session. Just like to remind you that we'll have another comfort break in about 30 minutes time. And during this section, we are going to be covering
Come over.
topics on stress and adaptogens. And I'd just like to remind participants that it would be really lovely if I could have your attention. If there's anything you'd like to raise, maybe raise it within the group dynamic. And if not, just catch me at a later point and I'm really happy to ask your questions. But just for now, it'd be great if you're able to just be present and absorb everything that I'm going to share.
Yes.
Thank you.
Beautiful, really clear and disarming also.
I'm not confrontational too much.
No, just clear. It was
Okay.
boundaried and clear. Yeah.
Boundary.
I'm curious about how that part felt when you sort of readdressed that.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Gorgeous, yeah. Sorry,
I
go on.
just to talk about the process, and I actually would like to invite us all to be part of that reflection. But like, yeah, predominantly you two. I'd love to know, Nadine, how that was for you, what you noticed. Ria, how it was for you to hold that process. So feel free to discuss, but also Raquel, Natasha, like feel free to also contribute and jump in as we're all here and all witnessed.
I guess, yeah, just sort of being able to voice those boundaries from a place where the part isn't like jumping right in the party and just kind of like there, I guess like if it was somewhere like on the shoulder rather than right in the chest, like just kind of observing, rather than just like getting in the mix and like projecting into the situation. So that's interesting. And then that, I guess, in the more day-to-day sense, that's that just projecting a boundary, a healthy boundary, and almost like an expectation. So that was interesting. Yeah. That dog.
It's my dog being ridiculously cute by my feet.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Celebrating you, Nadine, on your unblending.
I thought it could have been someone's stomach rumbling or a dog somewhere. So either's good.
Mm. And Ria, what was it like for you in the role of unblender?
Yeah, it was great. I just wanted to I was just like off with the process then. I was like, okay, let's find out more about it and wanted to inquire more. But yeah, it was really great to feel Nadine's self energy come in more toward, the second time round. And also imagining that. potentially in a workshop, that might be something that I even do. I have a little, and to have Nadine approach it like that felt really nice because it was like, yeah, of course, I know I'm being naughty. So it was kind of, it felt like firm and clear, but also non-judgmental. I didn't feel like I was being told off, which could potentially bring up feelings in the group of a rupture happening, and I really didn't feel that from you, Nadine. So yeah.
I think that's really interesting to hear as well, because I think in day-to-day life as well as maybe professional life, where I or my parts have struggled to express boundaries is because they are worried about being confrontational and affecting someone else's system and causing a further ripple of damage. And so therefore things have been held in on my part. So yeah, I'm always very conscious. I don't want to, upset the apple cart too much so sometimes I don't. So that's interesting to hear.
I'm just noticing that this really loops back into the contracting piece beautifully, because it's a special context. When you're facilitating, you've already given the expectations and got consent. And so there's already a shared agreement. And so all you're doing is offering a reminder rather than creating a new rule in the moment, which can really help for those reactions not to take place. Or for you to be really sure that if those reactions are taking place, it's actually their stuff, and maybe that really helps to keep that space where it's not triggering those parts. I wonder if you, Raquel, as an observer, had anything that sparked inspiration or landed well for you. You don't have to jump in if there's nothing to share, but you're really invited if you wanted to comment at all. Or Natasha also.
Yeah, I mean, the only couple of things that I have to share. First of all, yeah, my parts were really taken aback by both of you, by Ria, your questioning, and yeah, you're just holding of that space and how effortless it felt for your parts, and Nadine, just your yeah, ability to work with your system, and then the strength of self and the clarity of self, and that came through with the second communication there. And then just the other thing I wanted to say was like that I just noticed how hard that was for my part to do that, to play that role. It was really curious.
To be naughty, Natasha.
It's really uncomfortable for my parts, like genuinely uncomfortable.
You need more mischief when we get you back to the UK for a while, I think. Yeah.
That's your prescription, Natasha.
Summer of mischief. I'm signing up and I'm signing you up. And you and you.
Am I the teacher?
So I'm really just with, in addition to all these questions that I've listed down, really the crux of what helps a part to unblend is when they feel heard, appreciated, and validated. And most of the time, they're really just blended to get some need met or get some message delivered or something like that. And when that gets acknowledged, it's very easy for them to relax. If that isn't acknowledged, it's actually like they need to double down and make sure that's met before they're willing to relax. And so, if you're noticing things like that, I'm with, it's fun to be the naughty one sometimes. Like that can be quite validating to just, name it for what it is and give it some of the attention it might be looking for, and then it's easier with that. And so the questions that you're asking really have that goal as well, to find a way for it to feel like it's heard, it's been able to express what it's here for, what it's noticed that made it blend to begin with, and then it feel appreciated and validated. Which means saying it makes sense. It doesn't mean agreeing that it's doing the right thing about it, but that it makes sense. So you guys up for swapping? Trying it the other direction? So if you have a trigger, Ria, that you could explain to Nadine.
Just give me one second.
Yeah, take time.
Okay. So, yeah, I find that this can happen at this, I mentioned this earlier, the start of a workshop, when everyone's just arrived and there's parts of me or my experience is that I can't feel them yet. Can't feel their energy. I can't feel them. And this part feels like everything that I do is too much for them or wrong for them in some way. And it makes me panic. On a subtle level, it makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing and I'm never going to drop in. And the experience that makes me feel like this is looking around at all of their faces when they first come in. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not slowing, I'm not sensing. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. And so in this situation with what you just shared, what would help you to sort of get into that mode and bring that forward for you?
I mean, I can sort of picture, I can feel it already as we're speaking to it. I don't quite know how we might be able to replicate it here.
So can I just check that I'm right in what I've heard, what I've received, like in the information with what you shared, is that the part or the trigger comes up when you begin a group session at the very beginning, and you perhaps feel that you're not able to read the energy or the dynamic of the group through people's faces just at that moment. And that's when this particular part arises. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So would it help if perhaps the small container we've got online now, um, you might maybe pose like an introduction to the session or however you'd like to start, and perhaps we could all just sit here as sort of non-responsive as possible. Would that help, or do you don't? Not
Yes.
sure.
I mean, help is a funny way of saying it, but that would
No.
have the desired effect.
Yeah. Would that bring up the desired part of this experiment?
Would that make you feel scared, would it?
Yeah. Shall I make you cry?
Okay. Uh, okay.
And just to check, are we on gallery mode?
Yeah, I can see all of your blank staring faces. Okay. Yeah, so welcome everyone. Welcome to this workshop today. And yeah, I'm already feeling it. Yeah. Yeah.
Go inside now, Ria, and just notice. Need some support from Nadine to check in with this part and unblend, and she's available for that.
So, yeah, the story that this part has is that everything that I do will be the wrong thing for the group. And I feel it, yeah, sort of like just above my solar plexus, just at the sort of bottom of my rib cage. It's like a overarching feeling of like hollowness in my stomach.
Okay. Would you like me to help you navigate bringing that out of where it's currently blended in?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So, as you've got your eyes closed already, if you feel comfortable to do so, just keep them in that way, and bringing your focus internally. And as you can already feel that part and that sensation, just keep bringing your awareness to it as long as it feels comfortable. And if it doesn't, just raise your hand for me and we can stop. Um, so you described the sensation around your plexus, is that right?
Just above my solar plexus, I would
Above
say.
your solar plexus. And the type of sensation that you're currently feeling, is it tight? Does it have a particular feeling to it?
Yeah, it has like it's sort of like a hollow cylinder, but it also activates, I don't know if it's a different part, but some panic, like it's got quite a fast energy
So
to it.
perhaps restless energy I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite scattered but fast.
And would it perhaps help if you bring some self-touch to it, like your hands to that part of your body, just as a bit of reassurance? If it wouldn't, then of course don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm curious if maybe you could also just incorporate a little bit of slow, regulating breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, and just being with yourself and that part, and a little bit of self-reassurance, as long as that feels comfortable for you.
Yeah, I noticed that it feels like quite a big energy, and I do feel like I'm still a little bit blended with it actually.
Okay. And are you feeling the energy anywhere else in your body physically?
No, just there for now.
Okay. Does it feel comfortable to be with it?
It is a little bit overwhelming.
Okay. And can you allow yourself to ask this part to just relax and perhaps take a little bit more of a back seat, step back from being so active in your physical body and your energy body?
Yeah, that's helped a lot.
Yeah. And do you think the part could perhaps just give you a little bit of space to just navigate your feelings around the situation a little bit more?
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely dropped back a bit now. It doesn't feel as intense.
Okay, that's good. And do you feel that that part is aware of you being there?
Yeah, I just let it know that I was here to help it. Um, and that felt like it got some recognition.
Hmm. Do you feel that helped the restless energy, the recognition?
Yeah, it's definitely just become a smaller sensation.
Okay. And are you noticing anything else that it might need in this situation?
No, I think it at this time I think I just wanted to feel me.
Okay. So are you able to just, if you haven't already, let the part know that you can see it and it's heard and you can feel it and it's acknowledged? And perhaps even if it's open to you, maybe even thank the part for bringing some awareness around what's come up for you. And how's that feeling now for you? Any different?
Would you like to redo the trigger and see if that feels different?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
No, I'm with, just before you replay that with this part to the side, just how much sense it really makes when everyone's arrived from their different lives and their different days and their different parts of the world. It's like a cacophony. There is no cohesion. So it makes sense. You cannot be feeling all of that. It's way too disparate. So there's something about them landing and the group feel being created that will mean that you're then resonating with it. And that is always going to come. It may just be also to let this part know this is part of what we would expect. It's not a sign of something going wrong. I see how it feels this time.
It feels really helpful.
Yeah, it's almost like you're the conductor, and all these different instruments have come with all their own drum beats, all their own tempos, and all their own melodies. And it's the weaving of creating the group feel that brings it into a sense of a cohesive tune. And that's when you feel dropped in.
Yeah, and I notice with spaces that I hold regularly, that automatically feels okay because I'm like, this is how I set this up. Whereas if it's a longer workshop or something different, it's like, oh my God, for some reason it feels different now. How am I setting this up, you know? Yeah.
So try this again.
So welcome everybody. Welcome into the space. And I'm actually just going to invite us to just take some breaths together before we begin. So just in your own time, just finding a way just to take some deep breaths, just slowing down. Beautiful. Welcome, welcome to the day. It's really lovely to have you all here. Ah, great. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. And it's, it's interesting because it's such a felt thing because I could do that and it could be forced. I could do that and it could be still from that place of fear. But actually, when I am myself regulated and tuned in, and what you just said, Kripa, was really helpful about it's normal that it's going to feel like this, that people are going to be janky and arriving in their own way. That's just good for that part to remember that it's not a personal fault. And it always does drop in. It's like sometimes it takes 5 minutes, sometimes 1 minute, and it always drops in. But that time period where it doesn't, it's like I'm a robot doing facilitation, you know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a little time now just to process that verbally together, anything that you learned, noticed.
Yeah, Nadine, I would love to hear how that was for you because you did a good job. So I wonder how it
Oh, well,
was.
I was, yeah, kindly navigated with some help as well. So thank you, everyone
That was
else.
the list of
Um,
questions that's on the sheet.
I know,
Um,
but I didn't have the PDF up, and I was just like,
yeah,
"Meh."
I thought that might
um, I guess, yeah. So you navigated that really well, and it felt like quite a strong part and a strong emotion connected to that. So it's really quite interesting to kind of witness that and also have that big felt like big responsibility to help that part, that big old part, like just move a little bit aside. But then also the difference in like kind of the second time round. And I guess it really, as you were doing it, really, really resonated with literally the power of the breath and just bringing everyone almost like, bringing everyone in with that. And it really took me back to kind of having that same like bubbling anxiety of sometimes when you sit down with a group and, as someone said, like, disparate and jangly, and everyone's come from different places, and that being in that self energy to just sort of invite everyone in, welcome everyone into that space, and like take a breath. Like, I really love the way you did that, and it's literally as simple and as powerful as that, but sometimes it takes us a long way around, doesn't it? Through the parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nadina, actually, something that I've never experienced in parts before was the bringing the touch in, and also the somatic aspects. It was really nice, actually, unexpected, and I appreciated that. Um, and yeah, it was feeling a bit overwhelming to be with that part, but literally as soon as you asked the question, can it step back and relax? It was, and I think that question is those questions are so powerful because they really give that self-agency, to have that interaction with the part where you're not just like, oh my God, it's just happening. It's like, oh, okay, I can interact with this in a way, you know.
Mm.
So as soon as you said that, it really just brought it into a more um manageable experience, and that feeling of, yeah, letting the partner know that I'm here to support also is great, and just helps the partner go, oh, right, even if it doesn't trust me yet or whatever reason, for whatever reason, it still goes, oh, curious.
With every not self-touch, as you know too well, preaching to the choir, wouldn't be okay for everyone. So I guess I hope it was all right how to approach it with, if it feels all right, do it that way. Because for me anyway, like if things get way out of control, I just think Reiki hands, go on, like just settle this. Yeah, so it's yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And again, it's an invitation, isn't it? You can invite people to try it and see if it works or see if it supports in some way. But yeah, it was good to touch on this part, and I am curious about it and want to do a bit more. I'm gonna take it into my IFS sessions, to find out a bit more about it because it did feel quite strong. Yeah.
Mm. I just have another offering for that part, which is that, as I already mentioned, it might not be a sign of something going wrong. And I'm with, how it feels to be a participant arriving for the first time to a workshop or a thing where I don't necessarily know everybody. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I trust the facilitator. So my nervous system is generally more up at that point. So I'm curious whether the message for this part is, rather than that being something that's going wrong for you, it might actually be that you are accurately feeling the group, but what you're feeling is that sort of, oh, I'm not quite dropped in tension,
Yeah.
which is giving you the right information of what's needed, which is some facilitation to drop in. And the breath for me worked great. I loved the second do-over, and I felt really brought in, and I felt your really authentic energy with that really warm welcome, absolutely contagious.
Yeah, and I agree, it's great and it's so simple to do and it comes from a regulated place.
Yeah.
And I've had experiences in workshops where that actually hasn't happened. Like
Mm.
where people just haven't dropped in. Like I did a workshop at a day retreat and people were just not in the right headspace yet for whatever reason in the group. And it was challenging because there's not the firefights, but the parts that were managing were leading because they were like, I just have to get fucking through this because these people are, I wasn't as flexible as I could have been with changing maybe what I needed to do, you know. So it's just good noticing, isn't it? So
Such
fascinating being a facilitator.
so helpful to know that like the biggest learning comes from the mistakes, if we want to call them that. Like that the worst workshops I've ever done have been the absolute biggest teachers, and I've so upskilled as a result of reflecting, integrating and processing and learning, and that's actually just so much a part of it, like any other skill that we have to fall off before we get the hang of staying on, right? So it's really helpful to be super loving towards those parts that might feel the shame of that, and to understand that's actually how we learn. I really love that. Raquel or Natasha, is there any reflection you want to share on that piece?
Just would like to share that I don't know, like a couple of things. One, I find a lot of reassurance in this, just because, you know, and whether it's the somatic work that I practice or whether it has been the IFS, what I'm noticing is that I feel there's this parts work that is actually happening in the moment without like my self energy consciously directing or orchestrating it. But I guess throughout this workshop, I'm just feeling also the value that this can bring to do it, you know, to come and do and say, okay, I'm just gonna, as okay, I'm aware of that part and that part, and I'm gonna sit them all at the table and see, you know, where we go from here. So yeah, I guess it's yeah, that reassurance. So I feel that I'm doing these things in a very in a subtle way, and how incredibly more powerful it can become to take these tools forward. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And really, it's the same tools that have been going on repeat in the group therapy, but you're kind of embodying them in a new way and taking charge of how to facilitate that for someone else is a whole another dimension to the practice. So I feel like that's really beautiful, and that the more that you get to practice, the easier it becomes. Like muscle memory for the parts, once they get this experience of, oh, I can unblend, and when I do, it goes well, then they do it much more readily.
Yeah.
So it can become like one breath and the whole system relaxes, rather than a really long process for every part. Like gradually, as the trust builds and the relationships build, it becomes just more fluid. So it's really worth the practice. And I really encourage that, like any opportunities that you get to practice together or to repeat these exercises or to integrate them into your own facilitation, more is good. So I want to guide just a short meditation to integrate and to close, and then invite us to check out with anything that we want to say to integrate, and to check out. And if there are any, I think that the questions that you guys mentioned at the beginning have mostly been covered, but if there are also some loose ends, some like final questions, I'm also fine to stay a little late to make sure that everyone feels complete. So you'd be welcome to also just name anything that might be kind of there for your parts or you. So just inviting you to bring your attention inwards again. And firstly, just thanking your parts for this beautiful opportunity to know them better and to be with them. Thanking them for the increasing trust. and letting them feel your deep appreciation and gratitude for all that they do for you. And really welcoming the parts that were here in the beginning, in the first meditation, to notice how they might have shifted through witnessing what's unfolded today. Nadine's elder motherly part, and the younger one, and the vigilant one around the edge. And Ria's funny part, the one that's worried that people won't like you, the one on tenterhooks, the one that keeps parts anchored to the self, and also the irritable ones that feel that they've nothing more to give. And Raquel's sinking parts and the ungrounded parts. And also the parts that volunteered themselves, that got triggered. Really welcoming them and thanking them for their courage and their bravery in doing that for you. And for their trust in how they unblended so beautifully. And letting all these parts know that this is just the beginning, not the end, but the beginning of a deeper relationship to you, with more collaboration and teamwork, and more potential for harmony and fluidity amongst and between them all. That they can bring all of their gifts, all of their skills and experience and knowledge and amazing devotion, but can offer that with so much more healing potential when they do it with and alongside of you, so that you can resource them as fully as possible with all of the qualities that yourself brings. So really thanking them for being willing to participate with you on this journey, ever deepening. And letting them know that you're going to be checking in and going deeper and meeting them time and time again. So you can be as patient as they need, as long as it takes, until they can fully trust and surrender. And so welcoming us each, with ourselves and our entire team of parts, back into the circle to close and offer any inspirations that you're taking away, any further questions or anything else that you want to say to feel complete today. Welcoming Raquel and Ria, Nadine, Natasha, and me, Kripa. In any order.
Well, I'll just go ahead and share that it's felt really wonderful for my system to take a back seat today and to enjoy being a participant. And I've enjoyed being with my parts that are taking their, technical co-facilitation role very seriously, and the diff like the contrast with how my system is when I'm leading. So I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed just observing and being a part of this just evolving container and watching all of the interactions and dynamics and transformations that have happened here. It's really touched me. And I want to say thank you to all of you. and Kripa, to you for being such an important part of this whole immersion and for this, yeah, beautiful experience, very touching experience today.
Yeah, I also just want to say thank you. It's been really helpful, and I love IFS. I love it. So it's really nice to be able to just be here and learning more and practicing and getting to witness you. Kripa is also great because you're an amazing facilitator. So it's great to learn from you. So yay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to echo the gratitude for your facilitation this week and beyond, Kripa. So thank you. Thank you to everybody. Also, obviously, Natasha. It's nice to see you taking a sort of second lead back seat this week a little bit more as well. And just gratitude to the space that was created with your session this evening. I feel like I've landed in self a lot more than I have been for some days. Feel like I didn't have much to offer at the beginning of the session at all. Forgot half of what I should have shared with the intro. So yeah, you go me. But thank you, and it's really useful to absorb and lean into some of the techniques that you shared as well, and just held a beautiful space. So thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah. Raquel, are you available to check out? Oh yeah, I see you've unmuted. Okay.
Yeah, hopefully got a bit of a gap between the blocks. Yeah, I mean, despite not being able to have my full attention and participation, I feel that I've got so much from it. And yeah, I can't wait to watch the recording, yeah, and echoing what's been shared already. Yeah, thanks so much for your amazing facilitation and modeling. Yeah, I had a moment throughout this that I was just feeling, oh my God, just come back from a training in London, and I'm like, oh, I'm so lucky with the incredible mentors that I've had around me and that I'm having with me. So yeah, I say thank you from a very deep place and appreciation. Thank you.
I'm very grateful also. I had the thought that it might be possible just to cut the section of the recording that's the meditation so that it's easy for you just to replay that if it's useful as a resource. And really wishing you all the best with the ongoing practice and the deepening into these tools. Really appreciating the presence and the availability that you've shown for this process. I just have so much respect for everyone who's dedicating themselves to deepening into these tools because of the way it pays forward and ripples out into the world and raises the amount of self-energy and the quality of consciousness across the whole planet. So I just feel so much camaraderie and kinship that we can just gather like this and learn from one another. I always learn so much, and it's always so rich, whichever side of the facilitator participant boundary I'm on, actually. And so I'm very grateful also. It was wonderful to be here. Thanks so much, especially to Natasha, for everything you put in and like every detail that goes on in the background to make this possible. And I just had to step in. So I'm super grateful for that opportunity. Yeah, I'm wishing you all beautiful rest of your days or evenings. Anything else anyone wants to say? I'm totally here for it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So grateful. Thank you, Kripa. It's just been so wonderful to share this space with all of you. And I'll be in touch over the next couple of days just to check in about next week and yeah, the closing ceremony. So feel free to get in touch and let us know how you're doing on the Telegram group chat.
Yeah, I believe I'm hoping to see many of you next Tuesday for the very final group therapy session. So I hope that I will get to see you again then as well. Bye for now. Good night.